Hey everyone, Wayne Fox with a video today about the Canon RS40 scanner. Now I've done several videos on the Epson 680 and 640 scanners, and all of my videos are in the perspective of people that have just large numbers of old snapshots they want to scan. I really don't look at these as an option for scanning other stuff. They certainly can scan documents. They can scan any color thing. One thing about a scanner like this is it's not as good as a flatbed scanner because what you've got is a stationary scan bar and then the photograph moves across it. And that's not quite as accurate as if you've got a photograph that's not moving and the computer's controlling the scan bar, which moves back and forth. But they still do a pretty nice job for this application and adequate for documents as well. It's a fine document scanner. But what I thought I would do, instead of doing a real in-depth review on this, I'm just going to cut to the chase and kind of show you the 4 or 5 things about this scanner, which makes it something I really don't think I can recommend. It is cheaper than the Epson, I think, by quite a bit. But like other scanners I've reviewed that are cheaper and are designed for this, they just don't cut the mustard. And there are kind of 3 or 4 things that I look for and where Epson kind of sets the bar on this type of work. First of all is color restoration. We're talking this particular stack, which is the one that I use kind of as my reference stack. These are photographs that date anywhere from, I think they go clear back into the 80s, and some are more recent. But, you know, as you can see, I think you can see this on the camera, they're fairly faded. So the first thing is, how well does the software manage to sort of restore those to look at least better than the faded photograph? I'm not really worried about how accurate it is to make them look just like this, because to be honest, most of my photographs have at least some degree of fading, and some of the colors are bad and some are quite bad. Second is, how well do they take care of other things that we might need? Because, you know, this is a memory. So for example, I've got this box. This box represents a specific date, a specific set of years, and they're in here in a specific order. And when I scan those, I want to make sure that whatever comes out of the scanner relates to that order. And that's a fairly important feature. And then on top of that is how easy it is to actually take a box like this and scan it. If I've got 5,000 of these, what's the difference? So let's kind of talk about the difference in the 2 scanners and kind of explain why I can't really recommend this very highly. I probably won't put a link in my description below for this Canon printer. It's not terrible, and if you can't afford the other one, but the challenge with this is a lot of money to invest in something that you're going to use for one kind of big project. And I would recommend that you maybe find a club of a lot of people that are doing similar projects, and maybe you can get 3 or 4 people to go in on a scanner like this, and you each get to use it for like about a month or 2, and then you've got it available. But anyway, let's talk about the differences here. First of all, the physical differences. So as you can see, they both have pretty much identical footprints. The advantage of an Epson, and not a big deal, but the feed tray does fold up and makes it more nice. It's a little bit more robust, but it's adequate for both. The output tray is much easier to pull out and manage with this one, but I can get this one to go, and it will go far enough to handle even long documents. I have found that the Epson, they come out and they drop down. So when I scan photographs, they actually stack up easier on this. I had trouble, and when I scan these first group of 15, you'll see a little trouble with these kind of jamming up, and I've got to kind of babysit this thing. So as far as other features, the Epson is capable of attaching to a Wi-Fi network, so you don't have to have a cable connected to your computer to be able to scan to it. I don't know that the Canon does. I saw something about it, but I don't see any setup here. And I didn't really delve into it because it's not that big a deal. I don't really need that. So the other thing that I'm not sure about is which mechanism is more robust. They both look very similar in the way they feed prints. I have had occasional misfeeds with the Epson, and I didn't use the Canon enough to really know because it became pretty clear as I started to use it that there are a few issues that I didn't like. So what I'm going to do now is let's go ahead and scan a small set of photographs in the Canon, show you on the software how it works, and show you once I'm done where we start to get into trouble. Okay, so here's our software, and one nice thing is there's only one program. With Epson you actually have 2, but not a big deal. One's to scan photos, and that's all it does, and the other scans documents. Here you can do both. it gets a little confusing because in this case, I want to scan double-sided because there are things written on the back of some of these photos that tell me who they are. And so you'd think that you'd want to scan double-sided. That's not what you do. You go ahead and do photo scan. Here you go to your settings. I'm going to go ahead and just do 300 DPI speed priority as I've shown in one video. If really all you're going to do is make another 3x5 print or show them on a computer, you really can't get any more detail than is available. 600 DPI doesn't get you more detail because there's not even 300 DPI of detail available in these prints. So no reason to. You can if you want, just slows it down. I say scanning side, auto blank page will be deleted. So what this is saying is that it'll automatically scan both sides and anything that's blank will be deleted. Now, one problem with this scanner is you would think this is blank. Very, very faintly, you can see manufactured by Kodak on it, and the Fuji papers usually say that on it. So what I want is, I only want to save the side if there's something on it that's valuable, like that with a name. I don't know if you see that or not, but Epson software does that very well. This software doesn't. Auto blank pages, I'm going to go ahead and set it up just to show you. Here I found that auto photo fix, just like with the Epson, isn't real reliable. It actually tends to over-exaggerate contrast and some other things. And I also found I didn't think the face sharpener was very good, face smoothing. I didn't really see a need for paper texture correction, so I didn't really try it. As I said, I didn't put this through an in-depth test, and you'll see why in a minute. But the one thing, you can do single-sided and not try to scan the back, and you can force it to scan the back. So this says scan double-sided, right? But PhotoScan also scans double-sided, but the emphasis is on printing that's on the back side. We're going to go ahead and leave auto blank pages. You'll notice that I can go to some high settings, more like a normal scanner. If you're scanning other than snapshots, if you're scanning colored documents, this software gives you a lot more control over that than the Epson does. That's not why you buy this kind of scanner normally. If you're wanting that kind of control, you're usually going to use a flatbed scanner. Anyway, we're not going to turn that on. And then we can go here to output. We can tell it where we want to put the images. Want to save them to a folder, you can go to Google Drive, SugarSync, whatever that is, Dropbox. And in this case, we're going to go to a folder. And here we can set the path to the folder. So we're going to go ahead and scan these here. We put them in face down. And then over here, we'll go to Start Scan. And you'll notice stacking them up is a little bit of a challenge because they don't actually drop out into the bin. Every time I've done this, I eventually get one that kinks on me. Now, as you can see, that one of the problems, the software on the computer, one of the problems that I've got is it's picking up every bit of printing. It can't distinguish the very light Kodak printing. Okay. Now I think I can do continue scanning, and I'm just going to put the same stack back in. So that feature, I hope, is similar to the Epson. So continue scanning, and so you should be able to just go through the box. Now, the nice part about this is scanning them literally in the order they are in the box because you're putting them face down. The Epson has to actually do this in the software afterwards because of the way you scan it with them face forward. But you'll notice it says I'm on image 42. So this is where we're going to get into one of the biggest problems of this scanner, one that I really, really dislike. Let's go ahead and look at the screen and look at the thumbnails. Here you can see them all. One thing it doesn't have, you'll notice that everything's skewampus. It doesn't have auto rotate. One thing I can do, which is probably the easiest way, is I can go here and edit, and then I can go to rotate, and then I can command click on a bunch of them and then rotate them all at the same time. But you'll notice that I've scanned every image, and I've also scanned every back, and I don't want every back. All right, let's take a look at let's hit finish, and let's take a look at the results in the folder. And you'll notice another problem right here. And this is definitely a bug, which I assume they'll eventually fix. This is my first photograph right here in the stack, as you can see, right? And the problem is it's doesn't have it's not a numerical sequence. So it should be 001, and this one should be 002. It also didn't scan the back of that one, right? If we go all the way down, for some reason, the first picture, it doesn't put the correct number on, and it doesn't seem to scan the back. You'll also notice that, and this is where it's a big difference, these are all scanned and sequentially numbered. There's no way to know which of these backs go to which front, other than it's the next one. So this is obviously the next one, but the Epson does this much better. Let's just take a look at a folder of Epson images. I scan these same images in the Epson scanner, and let's just see what the difference is. Okay, so here's the same set of photographs scanned with the Epson scanner. And as I open this, you'll see that there's a fairly large difference. You'll notice that each image, let's get them in numerical order here. I have basically 15 sets of scans. They're all sequentially numbered. So you'll notice that I have an A and I have one without a letter. And if I go down, you'll notice that eventually I have one that has a B. So you'll notice that here I have one that's labeled 10 without a B or an A. And this is the original that it scanned without doing anything to the photograph at all. So this basically is pretty much looks just like my original photograph. And then instead of making another number, it just appends the letter A and says, this is my restored version of it. And in the software, before you save these to file, you can go through those and you can pick which one of the two you like better if you want. You can say, show me all the restored ones, show me all the unrestored ones, and you can actually narrow it down. And sometimes the unrestored one's better, not very often. And as you can see here, let me just go back and forth between the two. You can see that it did a pretty nice job of restoring these images. Nice color, definitely better than this. And then if it finds printing on the back, in the case of this image, there is it does have the names of who is in the picture on the back. And because of that, it has that on there. And it's very clear, very clean. Notice I can't see anything manufactured by Kodak. That's not, and you can set in the Epson software how sensitive you want that to be. And I found if you get the right setting, you get this. But you'll notice I don't have hardly any other B's on here because on most of these images, it didn't have any printing on the back. So it does that very well, which in a case of old snapshots is a very useful feature, and the Canon is far lacking in that. Now you can scan all the backs and then delete the ones that don't have anything. Not a big deal, but the Epson does actually make it a lot better. So now let's talk about the biggest problem I have, and that's the actual scan quality. And the reason I really can't recommend that, I think you're better off with the Epson. And it has its problems. There's some noise issues and stuff, and I've explained that in a lot of other videos. But overall, for what I'm after, prints made from these scans look just fine. Most of them look better than the original. Quality's there. On a computer screen, it looks fine. Or on a TV, that's where they get watched the most. I've got them on a cloud, and all of my kids can get to them and go through them and just see them go a slideshow on their TV. Let's just look at the quality side by side of the two scanners to kind of show you why I'm really not very happy with what I'm getting out of the Canon. Okay, so how I've set this up is I've got the original scan. This is the uncorrected version from the Epson scanner, and these are pretty representative of the original colors in the scan. If you look at this closely, you can see there's a little bit of the noise issue that I've documented in a few of the other videos, and it seems to be a way to kind of soften the contrast to make it look more like the original. In this particular case, you might be seeing some thin white lines, and that's because I forgot to clean the scan heads before I did it, and any little piece of dust on your scan head on either of these scanners will leave a line as the picture moves across it, and those areas of the picture are blocked out by the piece of dust. But for comparison purposes, this is great. And now what I've got is on the left, you can see the result from the Canon scanner. This is with its color restoration turned on. and on the right is the result from the Epson with its color restoration turned on. And you'll see the Canon has a pretty stark contrast, and they're trying to pump the colors up a little bit. But as we go through this, you'll see this is a very, very common problem. Every single scan from this Canon scanner puts too much contrast in, and the look just doesn't look good. You'll notice the Epson is very similar to the original. This image isn't as old as some of my others, and it really hasn't faded or changed colors much. So it's made a slight color correction. It's a little bit less magenta. So let's just keep going through a few of these others. Here's the original scan where this one's a little older and it's starting to turn a little reddish orange, which is typical of these scans. On the left, you can see again we have too much contrast, and the Canon, instead of fixing the colors, actually exaggerated the color. Whereas on the right, we have a little bit more natural color. Maybe it's still a little warm. Again, notice the white lines because I forgot to clean the scan head. Another one, now we're getting back a little further. Now we're getting to images that are about 40 years old, and these have faded and they've taken on a red-orange hue. And here you can see the Canon got rid of the fading part by basically cranking saturation and contrast, whereas Epson actually modifies the colors to remove the red-orange cast. And you can see the Epson color. This is very close to how I remember this particular location. This was a church that I attended many, many years, so I was very familiar with it. And you can see the clothing color and the skin color is far closer to what we would expect and probably what the original looked like. Same group of photographs taken at the same time, same problem, too much contrast. Now, it doesn't look quite as bad with the Canon, but it still is not anywhere near the color restoration. So I don't think the Canon's really doing what you would call color restoration and trying to figure out what the color was based on what it's faded to. The Epson has always had they've always seemed to do that pretty well. I think their algorithms are just, wherever they developed them, are just really way ahead of anybody else's. Go through a few more quickly. This one is not as faded as the others, and you'll see that the corrections on the Epson were very minor, and yet, again, we have too much contrast, blocking up some of the dark areas, and just doesn't look great. Another one, and we'll just kind of go through these. The same story. The restored one looks nice. It's enough contrast to make it look better, but it's definitely not to the level of the Canon, which is too much contrast. Again, same thing. Now there's one that's faded, and we've got this reddish orange thing going. And as you can see, the Canon exaggerates it, makes it look worse, whereas Epson actually removes quite a bit of it. And this one looks really orange because I did have orange carpet back then. And you can see, though, the skin tones are better in the Epson version. Another one, same thing. The Epson did a much better job of restoring the color, a much more pleasing image. This one is another one, exact same thing. I think the difference is, to me, is pretty clear. The quality I'm getting out of the Epson one is an improvement in almost every case over the original, and the Canon is rarely an improvement. And I think there's two more. Here again, you can see the color correction and the contrast correction. The Epson's better. And the two more now. Okay, definitely better color out of the Epson. The Canon one actually looks really bad. And this, I believe, is the last one. And here you can see the gray cement actually looks sort of gray. So the Epson's been able to take out the color bias from fading and give us a nice image, whereas we've exaggerated that reddish color in the Canon. Well, that sort of sums it up. I don't want to go into much more detail. I'll put a lot more time into this. I think I've shown some examples, but overall, I think with the feature set, the inability to distinguish writing on the back of photographs, the way that it numbers the images so that you don't know which back goes to which front, the ability to save and compare both the uncorrected and corrected version in the process, and the final output quality, I just think the Epson does a little better job. Added to the fact that it is slower, probably 20-25% slower. Still pretty fast, don't say that. Anyway, thought I would throw this video on for those that are interested in this scanner, and I hope that you found it helpful. If I find out any more information about it, I'm actually going to send this one back. I was hoping it would work really well. It would be a cheaper alternative for people, but as it looks, it might be okay. It's better than nothing, I suppose, better than having them sit in a box. And of course, if you got 5,000 or 10,000 of these to scan, doing it on a flatbed scanner, unless you got a lot of time, which, some people do, this is a nice way to get them all into your computer quick. Well, hey, thanks for watching. See you next time.